with Art at CrowSong Lodge, and I'm back again with another video. Kane is also joining me today. He's going to be helping out. That's a lie, he's a cat. You also might hear some noise from Nora. She has the zoomies right now, and so she's being a little bit wild. It's adorable though. So today I wanted to talk about a request that I got in my email inbox. I'm not going to mention the person's name because I don't know how public they want to be, but it was a really great suggestion and not one that I thought needed to be talked about because I kind of felt like everyone was on the same page, but that's my naivety, and clearly this topic does need to be talked about, so let's talk about it. And what I'm going to be talking about is deck piracy and those kind of Chinese off-brand vending sites like Wish and Alibaba that are out there. But you also find these counterfeit decks on Amazon and Etsy as well. So that's what I want to talk about today. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Wish.com and Alibaba.com, they are these Chinese import sites, and they got really popular several years ago as kind of a way to cut out the middleman. As you guys know, a lot of the commercial and retail products that we have here in the US originally come from China, and these sites were kind of marketed as a way to cut out the middleman. So instead of paying, 20 bucks for that blender, that you buy at Walmart or whatever, you could go straight to the manufacturer and pay $3 for it, and all you had to worry about $3 plus $2 to $5 shipping and handling, and have a 6 to 8 week wait instead, and then you would just be cutting out the middleman, the retailer, and buy it straight from the manufacturer instead. So that was kind of the way these sites were marketed I don't know, 10 years ago or something. And Alibaba is the wholesale version of that. Most of those items that are listed on that site, you have to buy a minimum number of, anywhere from 5 to 100 items in order to get their discounts there. So, but what we're finding is more and more that these sites are not actually selling the original manufactured items. They're actually selling a lot of counterfeit items instead. And those counterfeit items are what I want to talk about today. Because what you'll find is you'll find a lot of counterfeit tarot decks on these sites. So when you find a deck from a American or European artist on a site like Wish or Alibaba, that's a counterfeit deck. The manufacturer for those decks is not in China. They don't have the selling rights in China. And we're not importing those decks from China and then marking them up in a huge way so that you can have immediate gratification and blah blah blah. That's not what's happening. So when you see the deck I love for my clients, the main deck that I use where clients can see it, is the Shadowscapes deck. And on those sites you'll find the Shadowscapes listed for $3 or $5 or $7. And that deck does not normally retail for that. It retails for, I don't know, I've bought it 3 times now. It retails from $20 to $30 to $40 normally. And that is the correct price. That is the price that goes to the publisher, and then the creator, Stephanie Law, also gets a portion of the sales as well. And that's great. That's exactly as it should be. When you buy it from Wish, for one, the quality on those decks is going to be lower. You're going to find that it doesn't use as good quality of papers, and the artwork is stolen. It's stolen from pictures that people have taken of the cards and uploaded to the internet, or off of the creator's website itself and downloaded and then reprinted on its own cards and things like that, instead of the original artwork. And if you're not familiar with the printing process, if you've ever had something printed, you usually take a big file and then you get it printed on something much smaller, and then that makes the print quality really really good. So you're having these small files printed on slightly smaller paper, and so the print quality is not as good and not as detailed, and then they're sold at this huge discount because they're not paying the author any money. It's strictly going to the person who took the images off the internet and printed it on some cheap ass paper and is sending it out. So they're making just straight up profit and keeping it all for themselves, and the author and artists aren't getting any of that money. And that's really really bad. So I know a lot of people think that artists are greedy and they overcharge things, and as an artist myself, if you're not familiar with the fact that I am an artist, I am. I do my art under another name. I'm a photographer and I work under the name Educated Savage. I don't talk about it very often because I keep my brands very separate. But as an artist myself, I can talk to you about like that process of like licensing and publication and all that kind of stuff. And the margins on art, on like professional art that's out there in the world, even though you see artwork going for like huge price tags, the artist doesn't actually see a lot of that money. And the price of doing art is actually really high. So for me, like I said, I'm a photographer, and a professional grade camera, just like out the door, is going to cost me between like $1,500 and $4,000. And that's my investment. That's my pay to play price. Like I can't even do art unless I can't do my photography unless I own that equipment. And I'm not even talking about lenses yet, right? Like a camera is useless without lenses. It's just a body, and I can't even take photos unless I also buy lenses. And those lenses have different effects as well. And lenses can cost anywhere from like $50 for a thrifty 50, which is like a very low end lens, to thousands of dollars in itself. So that's like your standard artist has that pay to play cost. And then once you buy that equipment, once you buy your paints, once you buy your digital programs, once you buy your paint brushes or your pencils or whatever, then you have to learn to use them. So that's what I mean by pay to play. Like your investment in just creating art up front is super expensive. So if you think about this in terms of music, you can't exactly learn how to play a violin without access to a violin, and you can't get access to a violin usually without paying some kind of upfront cost. And if those of you like were in band at all in school, you know that like a lot of times your parents had to rent an instrument, and that rental price was usually like $60 to $100 a month, depending on what instrument you played. And you couldn't even play it then. You were just trying to learn. So you might have been like really, really bad at it and you were still paying out that money. So so for artists, yeah, there's a huge pay to play investment in just learning to create art. And that's not even talking about like making that art into actual products. And it's not talking about creating a website. It's not even talking about like creating a portfolio. It's not even talking about like schooling or classes or any of that stuff. And then we're not even gonna get into marketing and that kind of stuff, and the number of people that tell you that you should just be doing it for free. So that the whole like artist for exposure thing can just go to hell. It's some real bullshit. So if you are really, really curious about what it's like to be a professional artist, I recommend that you get on to Instagram or Twitter and really just start following a lot of artists and listen to their stories. The art out there is absolutely gorgeous. We don't get to see it in mainstream like sales and retail and stuff, but the artwork out there in the world is absolutely stunning, and just giving artists follows helps a lot. So do that if you're curious more about the art world and how that marketing is going. But so here you have tarot decks, right? And for each tarot deck, an artist has to create 78, give or take, separate pieces of art. And not only do they have to create that 78 pieces of art, they have to be on theme, and they have to have certain restraints. So you whoops, I just kicked my tripod. So you create the 78 cards, right? But you're expected to have 22 major arcana cards, and you're expected to have, you know, the Lovers and Death and the Tower and the Fool and the Magician, etc., etc., etc. So you don't have like a lot of choice about the thematic elements of what those cards are going to be. That's a super challenge. I mean, it's super fun too, right? And you're not going to create a tarot deck because like someone's forcing you to. You're going to be interested in tarot to begin with, and you're going to be familiar with those themes, and you're going to have a passion to do it, obviously. But it's also a lot of work and a huge challenge. And so these artists pour all this work and all this time, and they're not creating artwork that's this big. Like our cards, you know, are this big. But this original piece of artwork is like humongous, you know, in order to create something like this. And I follow Stephanie Law on both Twitter and Instagram, and her art discipline is breathtaking. I absolutely recommend that you follow your favorite deck artists on the social media, because one, it gives them a boost and it gets them more actual exposure, gets them more followers, and gets them more marketing power out there, which artists absolutely need. Secondly, it gives you a way to see like inside their world, which is incredible. It's an amazing inside view of what's going on in the tarot and art worlds and how that marketing works. So they have to create these 78 individual pieces of art, right? And that's a lot of time investment. Can you imagine creating 78 different pieces of art all on a theme, like with assigned meanings? Like, you have to create the Fool, you have to create the Magician. You can't just like fucking do whatever you want. And so we have these artists pouring all these times. These are often like huge, giant projects, outside the fact of all the schooling and discipline and skill development that they already had to go through before they get there. And then they have to go through this publication process, which can be really complicated. We've been so lucky to have decks that come out like on Kickstarter and through independent publishing companies, and now the artists have resources like GameCrafter and stuff like that to publish their own decks without going through a publisher, which is really incredible. But a lot of these decks are still going through publishers like Llewellyn or US Games. So when they do publish those decks and you're buying those decks for like 20 and 30 bucks, a huge chunk of that money, at least half, is going through to the publisher. So the deck creator is seeing usually less than half of that money. I don't know the exact numbers, but I do know it's less than half. And so when you buy a deck, it might feel really expensive to you, but the artist is not actually seeing much return per individual deck for their efforts. They really have to sell like a huge number of decks for it to be really worth their time. So when you're buying these pirated decks from sites like Wish or Alibaba, or like from Amazon sellers that are not associated with a publishing company, the artist is not seeing any returns at all. That's all straight profit going straight to the pirates. And that's not cool. Now, the big issue here, like, I'm going to talk straight to your selfishness here, right? Okay, so you don't care about the artists. You think it's all like capitalism is a scam and whatever. Okay, cool. But if you don't support the artists creating decks, why are they going to create more decks? Like, they put all this passion and time and effort into creating a deck, and then they put it out there for sale, and they saw no returns on it. So how do you expect them to keep creating more decks? Unless you never want to see another deck from the artist again. Like, that's not where I'm at. I want to see more Shadowscape decks. I want to see more decks from Stephanie Law. I want to see more decks from the Tarot Mood people. Like, I love my decks. I buy them because I think the art is stunning. I love the creativity. I buy both mainstream decks and I buy indie decks. I kickstart decks. I love giving my money to deck artists and creators, and I budget money. I budget my income, my tarot reading income. Part of that turns around and goes back to tarot deck creators, because I have way too many decks. I love tarot decks and I want to support creators. And the only way I'm going to get more decks that I love is if they find it to be a worthwhile experience. Not just as artists learning and growing, but also to pay their bills. If they have to go get a job at Starbucks or something, they're not going to have time to create decks for me. And like, if we have to get down to like the nitty gritty details and talk about pure selfishness, I'm not going to get more decks if no one can take the time, if no one can afford the time to create decks for me. And that would suck. So every time you buy a pirated deck, you are contributing to taking money away from artists, and you are diminishing the number of decks that are going to be out there for us, and we're losing out on all those opportunities. So the person who wrote to me, who asked for me to do a video on this topic, mentioned that Ciro Marchetti, who created some amazingly beautiful decks, I will put a link in the description there so you can go see his decks, said he's not going to be creating decks anymore. So we're literally already losing deck creators because of this piracy, and that sucks. It is bad. And so I understand if you are broke and you can't afford decks. I totally understand. And I have talked about this on the channel before. If you are unable to afford to get a deck, one, apps are great alternatives. There's several free apps out there. They fund themselves through ads. So that money is going, and they license the decks officially. So like, I have an app from Fool's Dog for the Shadowscapes Tarot deck, in addition to the 3 copies of Shadowscapes that I have. And if I'm out and about and I'm doing a reading for someone and I didn't bring, like I wasn't planning on doing a reading and I didn't bring my tarot decks with me, I use that app. I paid for the app. It was all of $2. They officially licensed the deck from the deck creator, and so I know that money is going back to her as well, and I'm able to do a reading on the go using the deck that I like to use for my clients. So that helps a lot, and it's only $2. And if you aren't sure that you can afford that, if you're an Android user, you could always sign up for like Google Rewards, and they give you money to spend in the App Store for doing surveys. So that's always an alternative that you can use. Secondly, there are also like tarot deck sampler apps out there that are free that you can absolutely use as well. So check those out as alternatives. Another alternative you can check out is buying used decks. Now, when you buy a used deck, that money does not go to the tarot deck creators either, but the original purchase of that deck did. So at least you're doing something that is sustainable. The money did originally go to the tarot deck creator, and you're not taking money out of the tarot deck creator's pockets. And a lot of times there are agreements with used sellers to give some portion of money back to publishers, or they have some kind of deal with publishers in some other capacity as well. So used decks are absolutely an option as well. And if you don't think that used decks are okay, I've done videos on that too, and I'll put a link to that in the description as well. I think used decks are amazing. I have several used decks, mostly from my mother, but I've actually I've actually been given used tarot decks from my friends now, mostly when they have decided that they tried to get into tarot and it didn't work out for them. They were like, I have this tarot deck that's been sitting around in my cabinet for like 10 years. Now that I know you, why don't you have my tarot deck? And so I personally have a lot of used tarot decks, and I love them just the same. I've never had an issue with it, and so I will put a link in the description below for how to deal with a used tarot deck and like what the ramifications of that are. So that is absolutely an option to do as well. So yeah, don't use Wish and Alibaba for tarot decks, and don't buy them from private sellers on Amazon or Etsy unless those private sellers are actually the deck creators as well, because there are a lot of those on Etsy and Amazon as well, people who created their own decks and then are turning around and selling them, and that is super awesome. That's an amazing aspect of the indie marketplace, and we should be supporting that. But don't buy mainstream decks from independent sellers who are not the actual artists themselves. That's a complicated sentence, but I hope you follow me on that. So yeah, so supporting artists and minding copyright is like really, really an important aspect to me. Like, I went through that whole music piracy and movie piracy thing when I was younger, for sure, like in my early 20s, like when Napster was still a thing, and I remember that well, and I stopped like when I learned better and how it was impacting artists, like real artists, not just like Guns N' Roses, because I'm not even sure how much I really care about Guns N' Roses still, but but still, like, the way it impacts real artists is huge. And even when we're talking about smaller artists like tarot deck creators, it's a much larger impact. So if you want to keep having amazing decks out there on the market and not just the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, then please buy from a venue or a vendor who is going to get that money back to the artist, please, because we all want more decks, like more and more decks. So that is what I wanted to say about not buying pirated tarot decks or oracle decks either, and really supporting your local artists, because art is really, really important in our world. Like, we don't talk about how important art is in our world, but like literally look over my shoulders and look around for all the other YouTube videos that you watch and notice how many pieces of art there is, and I will help you out. Okay, so first of all, my glasses were designed by an artist. The makeup on my face was designed by an artist. The necklace that I'm wearing, handcrafted by an artist. The clothing that I'm wearing, designed by an artist. Like literally everything on my body was created by an artist. Okay, the sign over my shoulder here, created by an artist. Everything on my altars back here, created by an artist. This piece of furniture, designed by an artist. Like, this is how absolutely overwhelmed our society is with art and how little we respect artists. Okay, the panpipes over here, artist. The bed that my cat is laying on, artist. The desk that I have, artist. This photo of my honey over here, me, artist. The bookmark here, artist. Like everything you see in this frame has been touched by an artist, at least in some way. The phone that I'm recording this on has been designed by an artist. You know, you have the tech people who create the hardware on the inside, and then you have the artist who designs the outside. They create what our actual tech looks like. They have an actual specialization in creating our technology that looks cool and is appealing to users so that our phones don't look stupid. That is art, okay? So like, show some appreciation to artists, support their work, and maybe don't treat them like they're entitled selfish brats anymore, and like give some real appreciation to the artists we have in society. Okay, so that's my lecture on art. Don't buy pirated decks anymore. Don't buy pirated books. Don't buy pirated movies. Like, support artists as much as you can. And if anything, push for publishing companies to take less of a commission because artists don't see as much money as they should. Alright, Nathar at CrowSong Lodge. Let's support our deck creators out there. Lots of love to you guys. Hope you're staying safe. Wear those masks, all that stuff. Check out the links below. I haven't mentioned it in a long time, but I have a Discord server. So I left Facebook, and if you want to talk to me in a non-Facebook way still, check out the link for my Discord server. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.